The internet isn't just reacting right now, it's shaken in a way that feels different. Not because of a diss track, not because of a rap beef, but because one of hip-hop's most feared, unshakable figures, 50 Cent, showed something he almost never shows: emotion. And it all started with a single viral clip from King Harris. At first, it looked like the usual internet chaos. Another young celebrity kid saying something reckless, another moment designed for attention. But within minutes, people realized this wasn't normal trolling. This crossed a line that hip-hop has always treated as untouchable. Because in that clip, King Harris didn't just mock 50 Cent. He touched something far deeper. He brought up his mother. Not as a topic, not in a story, not even indirectly. He made it personal and he made it disrespectful. And the internet felt the shift instantly. There are moments in online culture where everything slows down for a second, where even strangers watching know, this is going to be big. This was one of those moments. But what nobody expected was 50 Cent's response. Because 50 Cent is not known for breaking character. He is the man who survived being shot 9 times. The man who turned trauma into power. The man who built an entire brand off fearlessness, sarcasm, and control. If anything, he's known for turning disrespect into jokes and enemies into captions. But this time, there were no jokes. When 50 Cent appeared on camera, the energy was completely different. No smirk, no trolling tone, no clever punchlines waiting to be posted. Just silence at first. Then a shift in his face. And when he finally spoke, his voice didn't carry the usual sharp edge. It carried something heavier, something human. "You don't talk about my mother," he said quietly. And then he paused. That pause changed everything. Because in that moment, the internet didn't see 50 Cent the celebrity. It didn't see the businessman, the TV producer, the cultural icon. It saw Curtis Jackson, a man who lost his mother when he was just 8 years old. A child who never got closure, never got answers that fully made sense, never got the chance to grow up and process it in peace before life forced him into survival mode. That wound never left him. It just got buried under success, fame, and survival instincts. And King Harris, whether he understood it or not, reopened it in front of millions of people. The reaction online was immediate. Clips spread everywhere. Comment sections split in real time. Some people were furious at King. Others were shocked that something so personal was ever said publicly. And many just kept replaying 50 Cent's face, trying to understand how a man so hardened could suddenly look so exposed. But the deeper story didn't start there. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to understand what 50 Cent represents beyond the headlines. People talk about him like he's untouchable: the jokes, the trolling, the industry battles, the business empire. But underneath all of that is a history shaped by loss, violence, and emotional armor built over decades. His mother wasn't just a parent. She was his anchor, his only consistent source of love in a world that gave him very little stability. She raised him in survival conditions, doing what she could in a world that was already stacked against her. And then, suddenly, she was gone. Violently, mysteriously, without the kind of closure most people need to heal. That kind of loss doesn't fade, it transforms. And in 50 Cent's case, it transformed into discipline, ambition, and emotional distance. He became someone who jokes before he feels. Someone who attacks before he gets attacked. Someone who learned early that vulnerability could be dangerous. So when King Harris made that comment, laughing, joking, feeding off attention, it didn't land like internet talk. It landed like emotional violence. What made it worse is that King Harris didn't seem to understand the weight of what he said. That's what disturbed people watching the clip in real time. The smirk, the casual tone, the way it was treated like entertainment. Because there's a line in culture, unspoken but universally understood: where certain topics are off limits. And parents, especially deceased parents, sit at the very top of that list. Once that line is crossed, the conversation stops being about clout. It becomes personal. And in this case, it became generational. King Harris, the son of T, has been in the public eye his entire life. Fame wasn't something he chose, it was something he grew up inside. Cameras were normal. Attention was normal. Public judgment was normal. But somewhere along the way, normal stopped being enough. He started pushing boundaries online, acting out, testing reactions, trying to separate himself from his father's shadow by becoming louder, more controversial, more unpredictable. And that's where things started spiraling. Because when someone grows up inside fame, they often confuse attention with identity. And when attention becomes the goal, consequences stop feeling real until they become unavoidable. That's exactly what happened here. Because 50 Cent's reaction wasn't just personal, it reset the entire tone of the situation. The moment he spoke about his mother, everything shifted from internet moment to real-world impact. And that's when industry whispers began. Not about music, not about beef, but about consequences. People close to the situation started hinting that this wasn't going to stay online for long. That behind the scenes, conversations were already happening, not to escalate things, but to contain them. Because once emotions like this enter the public space between figures this influential, the ripple effect spreads far beyond social media. It affects relationships, brands, public image, even future opportunities. And suddenly, what looked like a reckless comment from a teenager became something much larger, a cultural flashpoint. Meanwhile, 50 Cent didn't continue the back and forth. He didn't escalate. He didn't chase attention. He said what he felt needed to be said and stepped back. And that silence said more than any reply could. Because in hip-hop, silence from someone like 50 Cent doesn't mean the situation is over. It means it's being processed. And when someone like him processes something deeply personal, people pay attention. Now the internet is split between two realities. One side believes King Harris went too far and triggered something he doesn't understand. The other side believes this is a harsh lesson in boundaries, one that fame and privilege often delay until it's too late. But underneath both sides, there's a shared realization. This wasn't just drama. It was pain meeting publicity. And that combination is always dangerous. Because pain doesn't trend. It doesn't entertain. It reacts. And now the entire culture is waiting, not for a diss track, not for a response, not for a clapback, but for what happens next when emotion leaves the internet and enters real life. And that's the part nobody can predict. The internet didn't just react to that moment, it fractured. Because what started as a viral disrespect clip from King Harris didn't stay online drama for long. It turned into something heavier, something uncomfortable, something that suddenly felt real. And at the center of it all was 50 Cent. A man the world has spent decades labeling as unbreakable. Cold, controlled, unshaken. But in that one live stream, all of that armor started to crack. It began with a clip that spread everywhere within minutes. King Harris laughing, joking, speaking recklessly about 50 Cent's past, mocking things he clearly didn't fully understand. At first, people thought it was just another clout moment, another young celebrity saying something dumb for attention. But then came the line that changed everything. A comment about 50 Cent's mother. Not vague, not subtle, direct. And the internet went silent for a second. Because there are moments in hip-hop where everyone instinctively knows, you don't go there. That's one of them. And when 50 Cent saw it, something shifted immediately. At first, fans expected the usual response. The memes, the jokes, The brutal captions that destroy careers without raising his voice. That's what 50 Cent is known for, turning disrespect into entertainment. But this time, there was no entertainment. He went live. And he didn't perform. He didn't joke. He didn't hide behind humor. He just sat there, still, quiet, and for a moment, it looked like he was trying to decide whether to even speak. When he finally did, his voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't the voice of a celebrity. It was the voice of a son. "You don't talk about my mother," he said. "Don't ever talk about her like that." No threats, no jokes, no ego. Just pain. Raw, unfiltered pain. And that's what made the internet freeze. Because people realize something they don't often remember about 50 Cent. Behind all the toughness, all the trolling, all the business moves, there is still a man who lost the only person who ever made him feel safe. His mother, Sabrina. She wasn't just part of his story. She was the foundation of it. The only consistent love in a life that otherwise taught him survival first and everything else second. And when she was taken from him at a young age, something in him changed permanently. That's not the kind of loss you get over. That's the kind you build your entire personality around. So when King Harris, someone born into privilege, fame, and opportunity, casually mocked that pain, it didn't land like internet talk. It landed like disrespect toward something sacred. But what made things even more complicated was what happened after the live stream ended. Because according to people close to 50 Cent, the moment he turned off the camera, the energy changed again. The emotion didn't disappear, it transformed. He didn't alk away. He didn't distract himself. He just sat there, staring at the screen. Processing. Not anger. Something deeper. And then he spoke again. Not to the internet, not to fans, not to the media. To himself. "That boy don't know what he crossed," he muttered. And then he picked up the phone. That's where everything shifted from viral moment to real-world tension. Because 50 Cent didn't call a publicist. He didn't call a friend. He didn't call someone in entertainment. He called someone connected directly to the Harris family. And when that call went through, the tone changed completely. According to insiders, 50 Cent's voice was no longer emotional. It was controlled, focused, almost eerily calm. And the first words he said weren't complicated. They were direct. Put his father on the phone. Not a request. A demand. Because this was no longer about King. This was about responsibility. When T.I. picked up, there was silence on both sides for a moment. The kind of silence that happens when two men understand exactly why the conversation is happening, even before it begins. 50 Cent broke it first. "You need to get your son." No shouting, no disrespect, just truth. T.I. responded quietly. "I know." But 50 Cent wasn't done. "I don't talk about dead mothers," he said. "I don't go there." He did. "So now it's between me and you." That's when the conversation stopped being personal and became something else entirely. A cultural warning wrapped in emotion. And then came the line that reportedly changed the tone of everything. "Your son doesn't understand loss, but you do." That hit differently. Because it wasn't an insult. It was a reminder. A reminder that pain isn't entertainment. Grief isn't content. And some lines, once crossed, don't just affect individuals, they echo through families. And here's where the story deepens. Because T.I. didn't immediately respond. He went silent. And that silence wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Because people close to both families later revealed something the public didn't fully know. There were old connections between the families, distant, indirect ties that made this situation feel even heavier behind the scenes. Not friendship, not rivalry, something older, something complicated. And that made King's comments feel less like random disrespect, and more like something that collided with history he didn't understand. Meanwhile, while that tension was building behind closed doors, King Harris was still online, laughing, posting, dismissing everything, acting like nothing was happening. And that contrast between public chaos and private escalation is what made the situation explode. Because while he was joking on live, T.I. was reportedly reacting in real time to what 50 Cent had just shown him. And that's when the household shifted. Vast. Reports from people nearby describe shouting, movement through the house, panic, not from outsiders but from realization. Because for the first time, this wasn't about fame. It wasn't about internet comments. It was about consequences. And T.I. was standing in the middle of it. But the real shock came later that night, when an anonymous insider dropped a message that spread instantly. 50 crying wasn't weakness. That was decades of pain hitting at once. And then the second part. What he told T.I. on that call, he meant every word. The internet immediately started spinning theories. Was there a threat? Was there a warning? Was this becoming something bigger than a family dispute? But according to another leak, the truth wasn't about violence at all. It was something heavier, something colder, something that stuck with people more than any threat could. Because what 50 Cent actually said was this: teach your son what loss feels like before life teaches him the hard way. And that line spread faster than anything else in the story. Because it wasn't about punishment. It was about understanding. And then came the final twist. A second call. Not to T.I., not to management, not to the industry, but to someone completely unexpected. And whatever was said in that second call hasn't fully come out yet. But insiders agree on one thing. The situation is no longer just about King Harris. It's about what happens when disrespect, grief, and legacy all collide in real time, in a culture where every word carries weight. The internet thought it had already reached peak chaos. A viral disrespect clip. 50 Cent breaking down on camera. A heated call with T.I. And a teenage King Harris at the center of it all. But what came next didn't just escalate the story, it completely rewrote it. Because just when everyone believed the situation was about ego, clout, and a reckless teenager pushing the wrong buttons, a second phone call from 50 Cent changed the entire direction of the narrative. And nobody saw it coming. When news broke that 50 Cent made another private call after his emotional live stream, the internet went into full investigation mode. Fans weren't just reacting anymore, they were decoding. Who did he call? Why would he go deeper into a situation he already emotionally reacted to? And why were insiders saying the person he contacted could change everything King Harris thinks he knows about himself? For hours, theories flooded social media. Some guessed industry executives. Some guessed legal teams. Some even assumed it was a setup for a public response. But the truth turned out to be far more personal and far more uncomfortable. The second call wasn't made to a celebrity. It wasn't made to T.I. It wasn't made to management. It wasn't made for damage control. It was made to someone from King Harris's earliest childhood, someone almost completely erased from the public story. A woman named Miss Angela, King's former nanny. A figure from a time before fame, before cameras, before attitude, before the internet turned him into a personality instead of a child. someone who had been quietly removed from the family's circle years ago. And according to multiple insiders, when 50 Cent reached her, even she was confused. "Curtis," she reportedly said when she picked up, "I haven't heard your voice in years. Why are you calling me about that boy?" That question alone set the tone. Because this wasn't entertainment anymore. This was history being reopened. What followed was a conversation that insiders described as deeply emotional and brutally honest. 50 didn't start with accusations. He didn't start with anger. He asked one simple question. What was King really like when he was little? And that question opened a door nobody expected. Miss Angela paused for a long moment before answering. Then she said something that changed everything. King isn't disrespectful because he's evil. He's disrespectful because he's hurt. That line alone reframed the entire situation. Because suddenly, this wasn't about a viral clip anymore. It was about a child who never emotionally grew out of pressure, expectation, and identity confusion. According to her, King Harris was not always the loud, chaotic, attention-chasing personality people see online today. He used to be quiet, sensitive, observant, even insecure. A child constantly living in comparison, constantly being measured against a father whose legacy was already larger than life. And that pressure, she said, started early. Very early. He used to say things like, "If I act tough, my dad will respect me more," she allegedly told 50. He thought strength meant never showing softness. That one belief, formed in childhood, became the foundation of everything people now call behavior issues. But in reality, it was identity confusion mixed with pressure most adults wouldn't survive, let alone a kid growing up in the public eye. 50 Cent reportedly stayed silent for almost a full minute after hearing that. Because it hit something deeper than the current drama. It mirrored something he understood too well. Cycles, fathers, distance, expectation, and emotional gaps that never fully heal. But Miss Angela wasn't finished. She added another layer that made the situation even heavier. Whenever he felt ignored or overshadowed, he acted out more because negative attention still felt like attention. That detail reframed everything fans thought they knew. King wasn't just being reckless for fun. He was chasing visibility in the only way he knew how. Even if it came through controversy. Even if it came through disrespect. Then came the question 50 couldn't avoid anymore. Why would he say that about my mother? And the answer was simple but devastating. Because you represent everything he's trying to become, and everything he feels he's not. That line didn't just explain the insult. It exposed the psychology behind it. This wasn't random disrespect. It was projection. Admiration twisted into rivalry. Pain disguised as performance. While that conversation was unfolding, the internet was already melting down over a leaked behind-the-scenes clip from 50's live stream aftermath. In the video, he was no longer the composed public figure. He looked exhausted, lowered shoulders, empty stare, and in a quiet moment, he allegedly said something that stunned everyone. "I failed my son once. I won't watch another one go down the same path." Fans immediately assumed he meant his biological son, Marquise. And that interpretation added another emotional layer to everything. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about King. It was about 50's unresolved past. And that's where the story shifted again. Because while 50 was digging into King's childhood truth, King himself went live. And this time, the energy was different. No jokes, no laughing, no trolling, just frustration. "I don't know why everybody acting like 50 my father or something," King said, pacing on camera. "He crying about his mom, that's his business. It ain't got nothing to do with me." But that sentence backfired instantly, because instead of calming the situation, it confirmed something even bigger. King still didn't understand the emotional weight behind what he had triggered. And worse, he didn't realize how deeply it had already escalated behind the scenes. Then came the moment that sealed the leak's credibility. King, in frustration, accidentally referenced Miss Angela. "I ain't even know why they bringing my old nanny into this." The second those words left his mouth, the internet froze. Because he had just confirmed the second phone call without realizing it. Everything 50 had done privately was now public confirmation. Behind the scenes, T.I. reportedly reached his breaking point. Insiders described chaos inside the Harris household. Arguments, emotional breakdowns, phone confiscations. Not because of fame, but because the situation had moved beyond control. And just when it felt like the story couldn't get heavier, another leak surfaced. A second confirmation that 50 Cent didn't stop at Miss Angela. There was another call, another connection, another piece of King's childhood history being pulled into the light. But this time, the source wasn't a caregiver. It was someone from his early school years. Someone who remembers a moment King has allegedly spent years trying to bury. And according to insiders, that person is now preparing to speak publicly. The final warning came from a single anonymous message. If this comes out, King Harris won't be able to perform a tough guy persona ever again. And that's where everything stands now. Not resolved, not cooled down, not forgotten, but escalating, quietly, behind the scenes. Because this is no longer about a viral clip. It's no longer about 50 Cent's reaction. And it's no longer just about King Harris. It has become something far more uncomfortable. A full exposure of childhood, trauma, ego, and identity, all colliding in real time under public pressure. It was about risk, about direction, about whether someone young was spiraling in real time while the world watched like spectators. Then came the most shocking alleged detail of all. A source claimed 50 Cent asked T.I. a question during their meeting that completely shifted the room. "When did you realize your son stopped feeling loved?" According to the rumor, T.I. didn't respond immediately. He simply lowered his head. And in that silence, the entire situation became heavier than anyone expected. Because at that point, this was no longer about fame, arguments, or online entertainment. It had turned into something far more uncomfortable. A reflection, a mirror, and maybe for everyone watching, a reminder that behind every viral moment, there's always a story nobody fully understands. King Harris was humiliated that day. But he never told his parents. He never told his nanny. He never told a teacher. He kept it buried deep inside himself like something too heavy to explain, too painful to relive. But someone saw it. A school counselor. She later claimed that she had access to surveillance footage from the playground incident, and what she saw changed how she understood the child completely. After reviewing it, she requested a private meeting with King. No cameras, no teachers, no distractions. Just a quiet room and a shaken child trying to hold himself together. According to her later voice note, when she spoke to him, King couldn't even maintain eye contact. His voice cracked. His breathing was uneven. And then, through tears, he reportedly whispered something that stuck with her forever. "I'm not weak. I promise I'm not weak." That sentence became the turning point. Not just for what happened to him, but for who he became afterward. Because according to the counselor, that was the exact moment everything shifted. That was the day the version of King Harris the world now knows was born. Not out of confidence, not out of arrogance, but out of defense. She described it simply. That was the day he decided he would never cry again. And when that voice note eventually leaked online, the entire narrative shifted. For the first time, the internet didn't laugh. It didn't mock. It didn't argue. It listened. Because suddenly, the attitude people saw wasn't just attitude anymore. It looked like armor. It looked like protection built over pain nobody understood. But King Harris wasn't ready for that interpretation. And when he saw the conversation spreading online, he went live immediately. He was furious. His voice was raised but unstable. His hands were shaking. His eyes looked tired, almost overwhelmed. And he kept repeating the same message over and over. Stop talking about my childhood. I'm not a victim. To him, the internet wasn't showing empathy. It was exposing him, labeling him, reducing him, trying to turn his life into a story he didn't agree with. But while King was trying to fight back emotionally, the internet had already made up its mind. Comment sections filled with a different tone now. Not jokes, not insults, but see, uncertain. Bro, nobody is clowning you. We understand why you act like that. You don't need hate, you need healing. This explains everything. But King wasn't in a place to receive that. Instead, his anger shifted toward the one person he felt was at the center of it all. 50 Cent. You think you know me now, he shouted during the live. You don't get to speak on me like you my father. You don't know what I've been through. And then he said something that instantly froze the internet. My real father don't even know half the stuff y'all talking about. So why 50 think he got the right to step in? That one sentence changed everything again. Because buried inside the anger was something deeper. Not disrespect, not rebellion, but distance. Emotional distance from people who were supposed to understand him the most. It suggested something the internet had only started to suspect. King Harris wasn't just reacting to recent events. He had been carrying emotional weight long before the playground story ever surfaced. Long before the nanny. Long before the online arguments. Long before the world started watching. He had been feeling unseen for a long time. And that feeling, whether real or perceived, was shaping everything about how he moved. But while King was unraveling publicly, something else was happening behind closed doors. A voicemail surfaced, allegedly from T.I. It wasn't meant for the public. It wasn't polished. It wasn't controlled. It was raw, tired, emotional, and deeply human. In it, T.I.'s voice reportedly cracked as he spoke. I don't know how to help my son no more. He stopped listening to me a long time ago. A pause. A breath. Then, I think I lost him, and I don't know when it happened. The weight in his voice made everything feel different. This wasn't a celebrity speaking. This was a father questioning his ability to reach his own child. And then came the line that broke people completely. I failed him somewhere, I just don't know where. For many watching, that was the moment the entire story stopped being entertainment. It became grief. It became reflection. Because now there were no villains in the simple sense. Only people trying and failing to understand each other. But just when the internet began processing T.I.'s confession, another message appeared online. This time from an anonymous account claiming to be connected to the private meeting between T.I. and 50 Cent. The message was short, but chilling. 50 didn't come to check King. He came to warn T.I. Naturally, everyone wanted to know. Warn him about what? The account continued. According to their claim, 50 Cent told T.I. something direct and unsettling. Your son is on the same path I've seen before, and if you don't reach him now, one day you won't be able to reach him at all. It wasn't framed as a threat. It wasn't drama. It was framed as experience. As someone speaking from a place of having seen a similar story unfold before. A warning born from recognition. And then came the final twist in the message. According to the same anonymous source, 50 Cent handed T.I. a piece of paper during that meeting. On it was a name that allegedly belonged to someone King Harris had been quietly meeting. Someone who, according to the rumor, had been influencing his behavior behind the scenes. Someone no one in the public story had properly acknowledged yet. The account ended with a single question. Who is this person, and why does 50 Cent think they are shaping King Harris's downfall? That question spread faster than anything else. Because now the story wasn't just about conflict anymore. It wasn't just about father and son. It wasn't even about celebrity drama. It had turned into something more complicated, something unresolved, something unfolding in real time. At this point, the narrative had fully evolved. The playground incident, the nanny's voice note, King's emotional breakdown, T.I.'s confession, 50 Cent's alleged intervention, and now a mystery figure pulling unseen strings in the background. Every piece added another layer. Every layer raised more questions. And none of them had answers yet. Because at the center of all this wasn't just fame. It wasn't just reputation. It was a young man trying to define himself in a world constantly defining him first. And a father trying to reach a son who no longer responds the same way he used to. And somewhere in between all of that was a story about cycles, about pressure, about identity, and about what happens when emotions buried for too long finally start leaking into the public eye. Now the internet is waiting, not for rumors, not for speculation, but for truth. And the next revelation about that name on the paper 50 Cent allegedly revealed might change everything again. Because if it's real, then this story is far from over. It's only getting started.